My son showed up Tuesday morning with a rescue contract and a smile that said he'd already won. He returned that night with his wife, but the kitchen table was bare. The accounts were empty. All that waited was a single envelope. When they opened it, the colour drained from their faces, and that was just the start. My name is Margaret Calloway, though everyone in Bracken Falls just calls me Maggie. I am 62 years old, a widow, and I live in the same small house Neil and I bought 3 decades ago. The quiet here in Oregon is reliable. I like reliable. I work part-time at the North Cascade Community Intake Center, mostly handling paperwork for people starting over. My life is small, managed, and finally, after years of struggle, it is my own. Until that Tuesday, I recognized the sound of the engine before I saw the SUV. It was too loud for our street. Brandon, my son, pulled into the driveway. He was 38, and he always arrived unannounced, usually when he wanted something. I saw his wife, Tiffany, in the passenger seat of the massive, gleaming vehicle. She was staring intently at her phone, her thumb moving in a blur. She did not even look up as Brandon got out, smoothing the front of his expensive jacket. He was already wearing his business smile. He carried a brown manila envelope like a weapon. "Mum," he said, bypassing a greeting as he stepped right into my kitchen. "We need to talk. I have got an incredible opportunity, but the window is tight." Tiffany remained in the car, a strategic move. She always pretended to be busy, detached from the actual request, so she could just enjoy the results. Brandon placed the envelope on my clean countertop. "I need a bridge loan, $280,000. The number sucked the air right out of the room. I leaned back against the sink. "Brandon, I do not have that kind of—" "Yes, you do." He cut me off, his voice dropping into that rapid-fire cadence he used when he was selling. "It is a risk-averse investment, a stabilized fund. I just need to cover a position before the deadline. We are talking a 24-hour turnaround." I stared at the envelope. I knew what was in it. Paperwork that meant nothing. "Who needs this money in 24 hours?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It is just partners, Mum. Serious people. They do not like to be kept waiting. This is the big one. This sets us up for life." My mind raced, not to the life he was promising, but to the life I was living. $280,000 was not a bridge loan. It was my entire retirement. It was the nest egg I had meticulously rebuilt, penny by penny, after my late husband, Neil, passed away. It was my medication co-pays. It was the emergency fund for the ancient furnace in the basement. It was the buffer that let me sleep at night. "I do not know, Brandon. That is everything." His face hardened. The salesman disappeared, and the angry son took his place. This was the part I always dreaded. "Everything? What exactly are you doing with it? You are sitting here all alone. The house is paid off. You work a charity job for pocket money. What are you saving it for? You are 62. Mum, are you really going to let my future fall apart over money you are just hoarding?" There it was. The guilt. The implied accusation that my security was selfish. I looked past him, at the magnetic clip on the refrigerator. It was a photo of Neil, smiling at a company picnic 20 years ago. For a second, the kitchen blurred. I was not listening to Brandon. I was listening to Neil. Neil, who handled all the finances. Neil, who told me I did not have a head for numbers. Neil, who died suddenly of a heart attack and left me not with a nest egg, but with 3 years of hidden, unpaid property taxes and a credit line I never knew existed. I had clawed my way back from that pit of financial betrayal. And here was his son, standing in the same spot, using a different kind of pressure but demanding the same thing: control. Brandon must have seen me waver. He softened his tone, placing his hand over mine on the counter. His hand was smooth. "Mum, please, do not make me beg. This is for your grandchild." Tiffany was not even pregnant. The pressure was immense, a physical weight in the room. I felt the ice cracking under my feet. The silence stretched, and I knew he would not leave until I broke. "I will transfer it," I heard myself say. The words tasted like ash. "I will have to go to the bank in the morning." Relief washed over his face, instantly replaced by that victorious smile. "That is my girl. See, you are a lifesaver. I knew you would come through." He grabbed the envelope, which I had never even touched. "We will swing by tomorrow night to celebrate. You will not regret this." He was gone as quickly as he arrived. I stood at the kitchen window and watched the SUV tear out of the driveway, spitting gravel onto the walkway. The tires crushed the edge of my lavender bed. I watched the dust settle in the quiet afternoon light. The lavender stems, bent and bruised, slowly began to right themselves in the breeze. I felt the thin ice stabilize beneath me, turning hard and cold. I had told him I would go to the bank in the morning, and I would. But a new, sharp thought began to take root. I would not be making a transfer. The lavender was still crushed when I picked up the phone. I did not call the bank. I called Dora Hale. Dora and I met in college 50-something years ago, and while I ended up in social work, she went into civil law. She spent 40 years dismantling complex contracts and sniffing out fraud. At 66, she was retired, sharp as a tack, and had the patience of a hornet. He asked for what? Dora's voice crackled over the line. I explained the $280,000 request and the 24-hour deadline. She was silent for a beat. "Maggie, get your coat. I will be at your house in 10 minutes. We are going to the bank. Not to withdraw, to disappear." True to her word, her Subaru pulled up exactly 10 minutes later. We drove to the main branch of my local bank, the one I had used for 2 decades. Dora walked in like she owned the place. We did not go to a teller. She marched us straight to the branch manager, a man I vaguely knew named Mr. Harris. "Mrs. Calloway is here to close every account she has," Dora announced, not bothering with pleasantries. "Checking, savings, money market, and any associated credit lines." Harris looked stunned. "Mrs. Calloway, is there a problem with our service?" "No, Mr. Harris," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "This is a personal security matter. I need the funds liquidated by cashier's check, and I need to open a new safe deposit box. Immediately." "And," Dora cut in, "we need to review and revoke all existing authorizations and powers of attorney on these accounts. Now." This set off an administrative flurry. While Harris processed the account closures, a senior banker pulled up my authorization file. He scrolled through a screen. "We have your standard medical directives," he said. "And here it is. A durable power of attorney, filed 5 years ago, granted to Brandon Calloway." My blood ran cold. What, I never signed that? It looks like it was filed with a packet of health proxy forms. Ma'am, back in 2019. 5 years ago, I remembered it clearly. Brandon, insisting I sign a stack of medical protection papers after I had a minor fall. He said it was so he could talk to the doctors if I could not. I had trusted him. I had signed where he pointed. He tricked me, I whispered, the words thick in my throat. Dora's hand landed on my arm. Her gaze was steel. Not anymore. She turned to the banker. We are filing an immediate and unconditional revocation of that POA. I also want a senior fraud alert placed on Mrs. Calloway's social security number, linked to this revocation. Note that the principal, Brandon Calloway, is now considered a high risk for unauthorized access attempts. The manager, now visibly sweating, typed furiously. Within an hour, my life savings no longer existed at that bank. We took the cashier's check and the contents of my old safe deposit box, Neil's watch, some bonds, my mother's jewellery, and walked out. We did not go home. We drove 40 minutes to Salem, to a corporate trust company Dora had used for years. In another hour, my money was gone, deposited into the Bracken Falls Community Fund, a pre-existing non-profit shell Dora kept for emergencies like this. It was then funneled into a newly created, fully revocable living trust. My name was nowhere on the public-facing documents. The Salem Trust Company was the trustee, and I was the sole, invisible beneficiary. On the drive back, we stopped at a strip mall. "Wait here," Dora said. She returned with a small box, a prepaid burner phone, and 2 extra SIM cards. We stopped one last time at a notary public's office. There. I signed a new, very specific document, a limited power of attorney, granting Dora Hale authority to act on my behalf only in matters of litigation and fraud reporting. "This is your sword and shield," she said, tapping the document. "He comes at you with his fake paper. I come at him with this." When I finally got home, the house felt different, colder. I turned on the new phone and turned off my old one. I changed the passwords on my home insurance portal and my utilities. I activated real-time alerts for any transaction, no matter how small, and placed a block on all external transfers that I did not initiate in person. It was almost 6 o'clock. Brandon and Tiffany would be arriving soon, expecting a celebration. I took a fresh manila envelope from my desk. I put nothing inside it. I sealed it. I then pulled an old receipt from my purse, a 2-for-1 dinner coupon from a local diner. I left them both squarely in the center of the kitchen table. Let them wonder what that meant. The panic would be good for them. They arrived just after 8 p.m. The porch light was on, cutting a sharp yellow square into the twilight. This time, Tiffany walked up the path with him, holding his arm. She was wearing a dress I had never seen, something expensive and bright red, clearly anticipating a victory dinner. Brandon himself was beaming, smelling of cologne, the picture of a man who had just closed a major deal. "Hey, Mom," he said, breezing past me toward the kitchen. "All set, I brought the good champagne." He stopped short. Tiffany bumped into his back. They were both staring at the kitchen table. It was empty, save for the single, sealed manila envelope and the 2-for-1 coupon from the diner I had left beside it. "What is this?" Brandon's smile tightened. "A joke. Where are the wire transfer receipts?" "It is not a joke," I said. I stayed by the front door, keeping the distance between us. "Open it." Tiffany picked up the coupon, her brow furrowed. Sunday breakfast specials, Maggie. What is this? Brandon ignored her. He snatched the envelope and tore it open. His eyes scanned the first page. It was the notarized revocation of his power of attorney. What the hell is this? His voice was dangerously quiet. That, I said, my own voice surprisingly steady, is a legal notice informing you that you no longer have any authority over my medical or financial affairs. He dropped the first page and pulled out the second. It was the carbon copy receipt from the bank manager. It listed my checking account, my savings account, and my money market account. Beside each one, in clear block letters, was the word closed. The final balance summary was a string of zeros. Tiffany looked over his shoulder, and her hand flew to her mouth. Zero Brandon. Where is the money? Mom, what did you do? Brandon roared, the papers trembling in his hand. At the bottom of the envelope, there was only my handwritten note and the small black USB drive taped to it. He ripped the note free and read the words aloud, his voice laced with disbelief. You told me not to disappoint me. I chose not to disappoint myself. He looked at the flash drive. What is this? A lecture? It is a ledger, I corrected him. Screenshots. 6 of them. The 6 previous times you temporarily borrowed money. The $5,000 for the car transmission. The $15,000 for that tax misunderstanding. The $9,000 for Tiffany's medical emergency. All of it adding up. None of it ever repaid. The mask of the successful son disintegrated. This was the desperate man I saw that morning. Only now he was cornered. You do not understand, he yelled, throwing the papers onto my clean floor. The deposit is scheduled. It is automated. It is supposed to go through tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. These people, they are not going to just wait. They are expecting $280,000. Tiffany, for the first time, looked genuinely terrified. Her phone was forgotten. Oh my God, she whispered, staring at her husband. You told me it was a stable fund. A stable fund. This is that crypto pool, isn't it? The one in Malta? It is a pyramid scheme. Shut up, Tiffany. Brandon wheeled on her, then back to me. You did not mind the returns last month. He took a step toward me, puffing himself up, using the intimidation that had always worked. You will fix this. Right now. You will call the bank, and you will fix this. I will not, I said. Then I will, he shouted. I will file for emergency conservatorship. I will tell the court you are incompetent, that you are confused. I will get Dr. Martin to sign off on it. He owes me. He will say you are losing your mind. I will have you declared unfit by lunch tomorrow. He was standing in the entryway now, blocking the light, his face dark with rage. I looked at him, at this stranger who was my son, and I felt nothing but cold clarity. Are you threatening to commit medical fraud to have me declared incompetent so you can steal my money? Brandon, I am threatening to save my life, which you are trying to destroy. I lifted my hand, slowly, and pointed past his shoulder toward the front door. The small blue ring on my new doorbell camera was glowing faintly. This entire conversation is being recorded. Brandon, I said flatly. Every word you just said, every threat. The audio is being streamed to a secure server that you cannot touch. He froze. He looked over his shoulder at the small, glowing device. Tiffany was already pulling at his sleeve, her face ashen. Brandon, stop. Just stop. We are leaving. He looked back at me, his eyes promising a different kind of war. This is not over. You have no idea what you just did. I know exactly what I did, I replied. Now get out of my house. They stumbled out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. I locked the deadbolt and watched through the peephole. They stood by their SUV, arguing violently under the dim streetlight. I waited in the dark living room long after they sped off. An hour passed. Around 10 p.m., a dark sedan I did not recognize cruised down my street. It slowed as it passed my house, then stopped at the corner, cutting its lights. It sat there in the dark for 20 long minutes before quietly pulling away. My hands were shaking, but I picked up the new burner phone. I dialed Dora. "It is done," I said. "He threatened me, and it is all on tape. And someone was watching my house." "Good." Dora's voice was grim. "Now he is desperate. We needed that threat. But we cannot wait for them to move. Maggie, waiting for a desperate man to act is foolish. We move first." The dark sedan was a message. My old life, where I slept with the window cracked, was over. Dora was handling the law, but the threat felt grubby, something the law was too slow to catch. I needed someone who understood the details people ignored. I needed Owen Pike. Owen lived 3 houses down. He was 71, a widower, and had spent 30 years as a United States postal inspector. He was not the kind who chased gunmen. He was the kind who chased paper. He found criminals by studying zip codes, ink types, and the way a stamp was cancelled. He was retired, but his eyes never stopped investigating. I brought him coffee and the doorbell camera footage of the idling car. He watched the clip 3 times, sipped his coffee, and said nothing for a full minute. "They are just trying to scare me. Owen," I said. "No. Maggie," he said, his voice as dry as old paper. "They are testing the locks. Scaring is what happens when the test fails." He looked away from the screen. "Have you gotten any strange mail recently? Anything you were expecting that never showed up?" I thought about it. No. Wait. Yes. About 3 weeks ago, I got a delivery slip for a certified letter. I went to the post office to get it, but they said it had already been picked up. I assumed it was a mistake. Owen's eyes sharpened. "Who signed for it?" "They said the carrier recognized the name. They let my son, Brandon, sign for it at his office. They thought they were being helpful." Owen put his coffee down. "Maggie, mail addressed to you, but delivered to him at his place of business, is not helpful. That is a felony. Let me make a call." Owen still had friends inside. 2 hours later, he was back at my door. He had a digital copy of the item. It was a certified packet from the Bracken Falls Municipal Authority. "Why would the city be sending me certified mail?" "They were not," Owen said, pointing to the scanned address label. "They were sending it to M. Calloway, Contractor Liaison. It was addressed using your name, but the destination address was Brandon's office suite. He used you as a clean name to intercept it." Owen had the manifests. Inside that packet was a performance contract. Brandon was a subcontractor for a new public works project, a small park expansion. To get the job, he needed a surety bond, a guarantee that he would finish the work or the city would be paid back. "He got the contract," I said, confused. "So, what is the problem?" "This," Owen said, tapping a line item on the scanned contract. "The bond. It is a fake. A complete forgery." My head spun. How do you know? Because the city comptroller who supposedly signed it, Sarah Jenkins, has her signature here. Owen pulled out his phone and showed me a side-by-side comparison. This is her real signature from a city paycheck file. And this is what Brandon submitted. The K is wrong. It is a high-quality scan and print. Brandon did not just want my $280,000. He needed it. He needed it to cover the fraud he had already committed. He was using my money as the collateral for a job he secured with a forged signature. I called Dora immediately and told her about the forged bond. The line was silent for a long moment. Dora, "I am here," she said. Her voice was ice. He is not just a greedy son, Maggie. He is committing wire and mail fraud against the city. This changes everything. Get me a copy of that scan. I am calling the town's internal inspector. We are not just defending you. We are building a case. While Dora opened a quiet file with the town inspector, I started digging through my own house. If Brandon forged a city document, what had he forged of mine? I pulled the box of files Neil had left, the ones I had spent years organizing. I checked my mortgage, paid in full. I checked my property taxes, current. Then I checked the county registrar's online database. My fingers trembled as I typed in my parcel number. And there it was. It was filed 3 weeks ago. A quiet lien. A security interest placed against my property. My house was no longer just mine. It was collateral. The lien holder was not Brandon. It was a company I had never heard of, Cider Ridge Holdings, LLC. I called Dora back, my voice shaking. He put a lien on my house. He cannot, she said instantly. The house is in your name alone. He did. A company called Cider Ridge Holdings. Dora was typing while I spoke. Got it, she said, her voice fast. Registered in Delaware 6 months ago. Minimal filing. No officers listed. Wait. Here is a state filing in Oregon. The registered agent is a man named Arthur Vale. The name meant nothing to me. But it means something to me, Dora said grimly. Vale has a documented history of predatory lending in Washington. He is a loan shark who uses shell companies to seize assets. Brandon did not just ask for the money. He found a way to take the house when you said no. That $280,000. It is probably what he owes Vale. It all clicked. The fake bond, the city contract, the sudden need for cash, the lien, the idling car. They were not separate problems. They were a net, and it was closing. Dora, I said, looking at my front door. They are coming back. They will not just accept this. I know, she said. The forged bond gives the city inspector cause. We are going to time this. We are going to set a trap. Get Brandon and his partners on record trying to enforce this fraudulent debt. We will let them walk right into it, just as the inspector gets his warrant signed. When I hung up, the house felt unsafe. The locks Neil had installed suddenly looked flimsy. That evening, I called a 24-hour locksmith and had every lock replaced, including the deadbolts. I went to the hardware store and bought 2 new motion-activated security cameras, one for the back porch and one inside, aimed at the kitchen. I started varying my routine. I stopped going to the grocery store on Wednesday morning. I took a different route home from the intake center. I stopped answering my landline. I was no longer Maggie Calloway, retiree. I was a target, and I was learning to think like one. For 2 days, there was nothing. The new locks held. The burner phone stayed dark. Then, On Friday morning, it lit up with a text from an unknown number. It was Brandon. The tone was completely different. No rage, no demands. It was a performance of profound humility. Mum, I messed up. I know. I was desperate. But they are going to ruin me. Just 1%. That is all I am asking. Just enough to show good faith. Please. I just need to save face. It was a new key, one he was trying in the lock of my maternal guilt. I showed the text to Dora. He is cycling through tactics, she said, her voice dry. This is the broken child routine. Let's meet him. Publicly. I texted back a simple reply. The Blue Hen Diner. 10 a.m. tomorrow. The diner was loud, all clattering ceramic and the high-pitched sizzle of the flat top. It was the perfect place to have an impossible conversation. We were surrounded by people but utterly alone. I chose a booth near the windows. Dora settled in 3 booths back, facing me, hidden behind a copy of the Bracken Falls Gazette and a black coffee. Brandon slid into the vinyl seat across from me. He looked awful. His eyes were red-rimmed, and his expensive shirt was wrinkled, as if he had slept in it. The desperation, at least, looked authentic. He waved the waitress away before she could offer coffee. Thanks for coming. Mum? He mumbled, staring at the salt shaker. I am so sorry. I lost control. I am in so deep. You just do not understand. He looked up, and his eyes were wet. And Tiffany. God. Mum. Tiffany is pregnant. The words were meant to be a knockout blow, a grandchild. The one weapon I had not anticipated. The one thing I still allowed myself to want. But looking at his calculated misery, the announcement felt hollow. It did not feel like news. It felt like leverage. Is she? I asked. My voice was flat, betraying nothing. Yes. 6 weeks. We just found out. That is why I need this. I am trying to build something. For your grandchild. I let the lie, if it was a lie, hang in the air between us. I did not acknowledge it. Instead, I pushed my own coffee cup aside and leaned forward slightly. Brandon, I said, my voice low but cutting through the diner's noise. Did you forge my signature to open a secondary credit card in my name 3 years ago? The mask of the broken child did not just crack. It shattered. His eyes went from watery and pleading to flat and cold in a fraction of a second. He did not answer, but his shoulders tensed. The hesitation was his confession. I reached into my bag and slid a photograph across the table. It was not a family picture. It was a screenshot of a transaction history. Owen had helped me pull it from a deep file credit report I never knew I should be checking. This card, I said, keeping my voice level. The one I never knew existed, made a transfer of $9,200 at 3:15 in the morning last Tuesday. The money went to a high-risk crypto exchange wallet. The address is based in Malta. Was that you? Brandon, were you cleaning out the last of my available credit before you came for the savings? He stared at the screenshot. He knew he was caught. The pity, the apology, the unborn child, all of it evaporated. The controller I remembered from my kitchen was back. But this time, he was not screaming. He was cold. He leaned forward, his voice a hiss that was just for me. You have to be smart, Mum. His eyes were hard. You cannot just leave the cream on the table and expect the cat to starve. You should have watched your accounts. That was it. It was not just an admission. It was a justification. It was a threat. Across the room, I saw Dora deliberately fold her newspaper in half and place it on her table. That was the signal. We had it. We had the coercion. Brandon pushed the screenshot back at me with one finger. You are not going to help me, are you? It was a statement, not a question. No, I said. He slid out of the booth, his face pale with a rage that was far more terrifying than his yelling. You are making a mistake, he whispered. He turned and pushed through the diner's front door, setting the bell above it jangling violently. I stayed where I was, watching through the window. Brandon walked quickly down the sidewalk. A moment later, a man in a grey hoodie and a baseball cap, who had been sitting at the far end of the counter, dropped a $5 bill on his untouched coffee and followed him. My burner phone buzzed in my lap. A text from Dora. Stay put. I am coming back in. She slid into the booth a minute later, her face grim. Owen was parked across the street. He saw the man in the cap. He followed him to a blue sedan. Different car from the one outside your house. He got the plates. This is bigger than just Brandon. I stared into my cold coffee. My hands were shaking. The feeling of being hunted was no longer a suspicion. It was a fact. But beneath the raw fear, something else was hardening. The pity I felt for my son was gone, burned away by the cold threat in his eyes. The fear was real, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was becoming discipline. The walls of my house had become the walls of a fortress. While I was reinforcing the physical, Dora was moving on the legal front. She met with the Bracken Falls town inspector and 2 detectives from the county sheriff's office. She laid out Owen's findings, the forged city contract, the faked surety bond, and the signature of the comptroller. It was enough. A judge, seeing the clear evidence of fraud against the municipality, quietly issued a search warrant for Brandon's business office. It was sealed, timed to be executed in 48 hours. Now, we had to set the bait. Brandon and his loan shark, Arthur Vale, wanted money. They were applying pressure with fraudulent liens and intimidation. We had to make them believe I was suddenly a much juicier and more vulnerable target. I logged onto the Bracken Falls Community Forum, a private neighborhood network where people mostly traded gardening tips and complained about zoning. Using a new, anonymous account, I posted a vague message in a thread about home insurance. Feeling so blessed, I wrote. After all the back and forth, my late husband's secondary life insurance policy finally cleared. It is a huge relief to know I will have a large payout coming in just a few days. Finally, feel secure. It was a lie, of course. Neil had left nothing but debt, but it was a lie that smelled like fresh, available cash. Owen, monitoring the local networks, confirmed that an IP address associated with Brandon's known co-working space viewed the post within 30 minutes. The hook was in the water. We only had to wait. The rain started 2 nights later, a heavy, wind-driven Oregon downpour that turned the streets black and shiny. I sat in my dark living room, watching the feed from the new cameras on my burner phone. The house was silent except for the drumming of water on the roof. At 1:16 in the morning, the blue sedan Owen had identified at the diner reappeared. It coasted to a stop 3 houses down. The man in the baseball cap got out. This time, he was not wearing a hoodie, but a dark rain slicker. He walked quickly, head down, but as he passed under a streetlight, he glanced toward my house. The new high-definition camera on the porch captured his face perfectly. He did not go to the front door. He slipped around the side of the house, toward the back garden, and my old, rickety tool shed. I tapped the screen of my phone, activating the preset contact for the county sheriff's dispatch. I did not have to speak. Dora had arranged a silent alarm protocol. The moment I connected the call and disconnected, a patrol car was dispatched. On the camera feed, I watched the man pry the cheap padlock off the shed door. He was not a professional. He was a thug, clumsy and loud. He stepped inside. The moment his foot hit the floor, a motion sensor inside the shed, which I had placed there myself, tripped. It sent a second, silent ping to the patrol car, confirming the entry. He was in the shed for less than a minute. He must have realized it was just a shed, full of dusty rakes and old terracotta pots. He emerged, looking frustrated, and started toward the house's back door. That was when the first patrol car, running without its lights, slid onto my street. 2 officers, clad in black, emerged from the rain. The man saw them and bolted, running back toward the garden. He did not get 10 feet. I watched on the camera as they tackled him on my wet lawn. While he was being cuffed, the simultaneous raid on Brandon's office began across town. Dora was there with the town inspector. They used a key to enter the co-working space, and then a battering ram for Brandon's private office door. They found it all. A high-end printer scanner, a box of blank bond paper, and, in the top desk drawer, a set of meticulously crafted counterfeit rubber stamps, including the seal of the Bracken Falls City Comptroller. Back on my lawn, the police searched the man from the shed. They found a burner phone in his pocket. It was still lit. The last text message, received at 1:10 a.m., was simple. Make her scared. Rattle the shed. Do not go inside the house. The detectives traced the inbound number. It was a digital VoIP line, masked, but the IP address used to fund the account was logged. It was the same public IP address from the co-working space Brandon used. I was making a statement at the station when my burner phone, the one only Dora had the number for, rang. It was an unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. Maggie. The voice was thin, wrecked by crying. It was Tiffany. Tiffany, where are you? I am at my sister's house in Portland, she whispered, sniffling. He does not know I am gone. Are you all right? No, she sobbed. I cannot do this. He is not just in debt. He is dangerous. I had to tell you. I have to. God, I have to fix something. She took a shaky breath. The baby. The one he told you about at the diner. My stomach tightened. What about the baby? There is no baby, she whispered, the words breaking. There was, but I lost it. 6 months ago. It was his idea to use it. He said, it is the only leverage we have left with her. He made me lie. The cruelty of it knocked the wind out of me. That is not all. Tiffany rushed on, as if she would lose her nerve. The contract, the one for the city. He did not just forge the bond, he forged you. He listed Margaret Calloway as the personal guarantor on the application. He signed your name. If he defaults, Maggie, they are not just coming for him. They are coming for you, for your house. In a town as small as Bracken Falls, news travels faster than the rain. A failed break-in, a police tackle on a manicured lawn, and a search warrant served at a downtown business office. It was a story. A local reporter from the Bracken Falls Gazette, the same paper Dora hid behind in the diner, started making calls. Dora used the momentum. She walked into the county courthouse and filed two things. First, an emergency petition for a protective order on my behalf, citing the doorbell camera footage of Brandon's threats, the text message from the hired thug, and Tiffany's affidavit about the fabricated pregnancy. Second, she formally submitted the evidence to the district attorney, requesting a review for criminal charges, conspiracy, extortion, and attempted fraud. The town inspector, now coordinating with two neighbouring county auditors, held a press conference. The scope of the investigation had exploded. He announced that Cider Ridge Holdings, the shell company that had placed a lien on my house, was now linked to a sophisticated ring of fraudulent contract bids across 3 counties. The forged bond on the park project was just one of many. The inspector released a single, damning email, uncovered during the warrant search. It was from Brandon to an unknown party, sent 3 weeks prior. The municipal paperwork is sloppy. I can optimize the bond forms to pass any preliminary review. Just get me the templates. The hearing for the temporary protective order was scheduled with emergency speed. The small courtroom was packed. The Gazette reporter was in the front row. Brandon was there, looking like a man drowning. He had a new, expensive-looking lawyer at his side, a shark from Salem named Ellis Crow, who immediately began the performance. "Your Honor," Crow began, his voice smooth and deep. "This is a family tragedy, a misunderstanding. We have a desperate son, worried sick about his mother's erratic behavior, who acted rashly. He simply wants to protect his mother's assets from her own confusion." Brandon, on cue, put his head in his hands. He even managed a choked sob. He played the part of the devoted, heartbroken son perfectly. The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Calloway, your response." I felt the entire room looking at me, expecting a grieving mother, a hysterical old woman. I stood up. I was not hysterical. I was not even crying. I was simply, finally, done. "He is not a desperate son, Your Honor. He is a desperate businessman," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. "And I am not confused. I am informed." Dora placed a large foam core board on an easel. It was Owen's work. He had taken all the data, the Malta crypto transfers from the secret credit card, the wire transfers from Cider Ridge Holdings, the consulting fees from the city contract, and turned it into a simple, devastating flowchart. It was a map of the money. A thick red line started at a box labelled Crypto Wallet Malta, moved to Cider Ridge Holdings Vale, and then split into 2 arrows. One pointed to forged city bond, the other to a box labelled Brandon Calloway, consulting fees. "This," I said, pointing to the board, "is not a family matter. This is a business model. It is a model that required my $280,000, or, failing that, the fraudulent seizure of my home. When I refused, he sent a man to my house in the middle of the night to make me scared. We have that man's confession. We have the text message." Ellis Crow objected, calling it speculation, but the judge waved him into silence. He studied the flowchart. He looked at the police report from the break-in. He read the transcript from my doorbell camera, where Brandon threatened to have me committed. The judge's face was grim. "Mr. Calloway, your concern for your mother's confusion seems to have coincided exactly with her refusal to liquidate her retirement savings for you." He did not deliberate. He struck his gavel. "Temporary restraining order is granted. Brandon Calloway will not come within 500 yards of Margaret Calloway, her residence, or her place of employment. He will surrender any and all firearms within 24 hours. We will reconvene in 30 days to make this permanent." Brandon looked stunned, as if he truly believed his performance would work. Ellis Crow was already packing his briefcase, whispering furiously to his client. As we walked out, the district attorney, who had been watching from the back row, stopped Dora. "The criminal case is worth pursuing, Counselor," he said quietly. "Let's talk on Monday." That night, the lead story on the local news was not about the city contracts. It was about me. The reporter had found his angle. The camera focused on the courthouse steps as I walked out. My face set. The anchor's voiceover was somber, with a sharp, sensational edge. "A local woman was granted a protective order against her own son today," he said. "In a case that exposes the dark side of family finances, the court had to answer one question. What happens when Mum stops being the bank?" The restraining order was a line drawn in the sand, but it did not solve the lien. My house was still shackled. A week after the hearing, a letter arrived from a different law firm, this one representing Cider Ridge Holdings. They were not threatening. They were accommodating. They were willing to resolve the unfortunate lien misunderstanding immediately. They proposed a good faith settlement to cover their administrative costs and release the claim. The amount they suggested was $50,000. It was extortion, dressed up in a three-piece suit. "They are testing you," Dora said over the phone. "They are betting $50,000 is a small enough price for you to pay for peace of mind. They are betting you are a tired old woman who just wants this to go away." "Part of me is," I admitted. The thought of paying, of just cutting the last tie to them and being done, was seductive. "Do not take the bait, Maggie," Dora warned, her voice sharp. "This is not a parking ticket. You do not pay sharks to go away. You pay them, and they just start circling closer. They smell blood. We do not settle. We fight. We get the lien expunged, and we ask the DA to add them to the criminal complaint." I agreed. The old Maggie would have paid. The new one was learning to stand her ground. My burner phone rang later that day. It was Tiffany. Her voice was small, hesitant. "Maggie, I am at the shelter in Portland. I do not know what to do. He found out I talked to you. Are you safe?" "For now. But I cannot stay here forever. I have nothing. Everything was in his name. The apartment, the car. Even my bank account is a joint one. He already locked me out of it. And Maggie, there are other debts, credit cards, store accounts. I co-signed. I thought I was building a life with him. Now I am just tied to his anchor." She was weeping, a quiet, hopeless sound. She had been a participant, yes, but she was also a victim of the same control that had almost consumed me. "Listen to me, Tiffany," I said. "Do not go back to him. I will help you." I called Dora again. "I want to help her, but I will not have my money end up in his hands." "We can do that," Dora said. "We set up a small, temporary emergency trust, a shelter fund. We appoint a third-party trustee, the shelter director, with the sole authority to disperse funds for Tiffany's verified living expenses, first month's rent, a security deposit, a bus pass, nothing in cash, nothing transferable. Brandon cannot touch it, and she cannot be coerced into giving it to him." That afternoon, I authorized a small amount from my own protected funds. It was not a handout. It was a lifeline, the kind I wished someone had thrown me when Neil died. With Tiffany safe, My focus turned to the town. Brandon had been able to forge a bond because the system was lazy. He was my son. But the loophole was the town's failure. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a letter. It was not an emotional plea. It was a formal demand. I addressed it to every member of the Bracken Falls Town Council. I outlined how a subcontractor, using a forged signature and a fake bond, was able to secure a public contract. I requested a full, public hearing on the procurement process and the loopholes in the town's surety bond verification. I was no longer just protecting my house. I was cleaning it. The final attack came 3 days after I sent the letter. Brandon must have seen it on the council's public agenda. My burner phone lit up with a text from him, sent from yet another new number. He had bypassed the restraining order digitally. "Mum, you are pushing this too far. You need to call off the DA. You need to retract that letter. You are not the only one who can dig up the past." A second text followed. "I know Dad's secret." My heart stopped. "Neil. Of course." Another text. A blurry image. It was a bank statement. The logo was for a bank in the Cayman Islands. The name on the account was Neil Calloway. The balance was substantial. Dad was smart. The text read, he kept a shadow account. Tax-free. The IRS would love to know how his widow has been living so comfortably. You help me. And this stays buried. You do not. And I guess we both go down for Dad's tax evasion. He thought it was a checkmate. He thought he had found one last piece of leverage, one final way to tie me to the old shame, the old secrets. I stared at the image. The old Maggie would have panicked. She would have seen the accusation, the implication of guilt, the public humiliation. She would have done anything to keep it hidden. I forwarded the image to Dora. "How bad is this?" She called me back in an hour. "It is not bad. It is pathetic. First, the statute of limitations on this kind of tax fraud ran out 5 years ago. Second, and more importantly, your name is not on that account anywhere. You were not a signatory. You were not a beneficiary. You are what the law calls an innocent spouse. He cannot tie you to Neil's crime. Period. This is not a threat. Maggie. This is the last, desperate gasp of a cornered animal. A cornered animal. That was all he was. Not my son. Not the man I had to save. Just a man holding a gun that had no bullets. I looked at the text on my phone. I saw the threat. I saw the blurry statement. I felt the decades of Neil's financial control and Brandon's attempts to inherit it, pressing down on me. I held my thumb over the screen. I could write back. I could argue. I could defend myself. Instead, I set the phone down on the counter. I turned it face down. I did not reply. I let the threat hang in the air, unanswered, until it suffocated in its own silence. I felt a lifetime of fear, finally, decisively. Leave me. I had nothing to hide, and I would not be blackmailed, not by my past, and not by my son. My letter to the town council had the desired effect. They were embarrassed. More than that. They were legally exposed. They approved the special hearing on procurement and bond verification immediately. It was set for the following Tuesday night. 6 p.m. Dora, however, treated it less like a town meeting and more like a carefully staged ambush. "A public hearing is theatre. Maggie," she said, tapping her pen on her desk. "We just need to make sure we write the script." She made 2 quiet calls. The first was to the county district attorney, who had already confirmed he was pursuing the criminal case. The second was to the regional director of the actual surety bond company Brandon had impersonated. The company was furious. Both men confirmed they would be in the audience. They were very interested in Brandon's public testimony. Owen Pike, meanwhile, was in his element. He spent 2 days in his garage with a massive piece of foam core. He created a timeline, just like the one he had made for the restraining order, but bigger, more detailed. He used thick red yarn. It started with Brandon's email. A strand went to Cider Ridge Holdings. Another strand went from Cider Ridge to Arthur Vale's loan sharking operation. A third strand connected Brandon directly to the forged city contract. It looked like the circulatory system of a very sick animal. He was going to set it up at the back of the town hall. I made a call. 2. I invited Mr. Harris, the manager from my bank. I asked him if he would be willing to present, very briefly, on the bank's standard procedures for revoking a power of attorney and the red flags they are trained to spot regarding elder financial abuse. He was hesitant, citing privacy, but I assured him he only needed to speak about general policy. He agreed. He understood what was at stake. The final piece was Tiffany. Dora's legal aid contact had met with her. She was terrified. But she was more terrified of being tied to Brandon's inevitable collapse. She agreed to testify, in exchange for her full, truthful statement about the forged guarantee, the fake pregnancy, and the city contract. Dora's contact would begin the legal process of separating her from the co-signed debts. She was, in effect, turning state's witness against her own husband. But the masterstroke, the part that made the trap perfect, came from Brandon himself. We learned through Ellis Crow's response to Dora that Brandon completely misunderstood the hearing. His lawyer, likely trying to manage his client's panic, had framed it as a policy advocacy session. Brandon believed it was his chance to get ahead of the story. He thought he could go, surrounded by his lawyer, and spin the narrative. He would be the victim, a local entrepreneur, railroaded by small-town bureaucracy and a confused, vindictive mother. He was so confident in his own performance that he started inviting people. He called 2 prominent local investors, men he had been trying to court for a bigger project, and told them to come. He said he was going to publicly clear his name and expose the flaws in the town's system. He was bringing his own audience to his own execution. Dora, hearing this, sent a final letter to Ellis Crow. It was a formal litigation hold notice, a demand for the preservation of all evidence. It legally barred them from destroying any files, emails, or hardware. It was a standard legal move, but its timing was a psychological checkmate. It locked the door. The night of the hearing arrived. The town hall meeting room was small, hot and packed. The press was there. The district attorney and the insurance executive sat in the back row, unrecognized. Owen's chart was taped to the wall, a spider web of red yarn. I saw the 2 investors Brandon had invited, looking uncomfortable in the front row. I arrived early. I walked to the long table at the front, where the counsel sat, facing a single table reserved for petitioners. There was a name card for Brandon Calloway. Beside it, I placed a single, fresh, white envelope. It was my final move. It was the only way this could end. I took my seat. The heavy oak doors closed. The old clock in the tower outside began to toll. I counted the bells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was 6 o'clock. The chairman called the special session to order. The last act was about to begin. Brandon entered the town hall, his lawyer Ellis Crow at his side. He was adjusting his cuffs, clearly preparing to perform. He stopped dead. His eyes darted from the two investors he had invited, who were now sitting ramrod straight, to the journalist from the Gazette, to the district attorney and the insurance executive standing near the back wall. The look of practiced, sober concern on his face curdled into one of raw panic. The town chairman cleared his throat and called my name. I stood and walked to the petitioner's table. I did not look at Brandon. Not once. I looked at the council members. "Thank you for hearing me," I said. My voice was clear and did not shake. On Tuesday morning, my son came to my home and demanded $280,000. When he returned that evening to collect, I told him no. He had warned me not to disappoint him. That night, I chose not to disappoint myself. I finished and sat down. Owen Pike was called next. He stood beside his massive timeline, the red yarn a spiderweb of criminality. He did not speak with emotion. He spoke like an inspector, tracing the line from Brandon's email to the shell company, Cider Ridge Holdings, and then to the loan shark, Arthur Vale. When Owen finished, the district attorney, who had been invited by Dora, stood. "The council should also know," he announced, "that Mr. Calloway's efforts to convince his mother included hiring an associate to break into her property. We have that man in custody. We have his burner phone, and we have the text message he received, sent from an IP address matching Mr. Calloway's office. Make her scared." A wave of murmurs swept the room. The investors looked physically ill. Before Crow could object, the insurance executive stood up. "I represent the surety firm Mr. Calloway claims to be bonded by. We have conducted a forensic analysis of the seals and signatures he submitted for the park contract. They are comprehensive forgeries." He held up the fake bond. "This document is fraudulent and worthless. Our company is seeking full restitution and has forwarded our findings to the district attorney for criminal prosecution." "We call Mrs. Tiffany Calloway," Dora said clearly. Tiffany, escorted by a different lawyer, walked up the aisle. She was pale. After being sworn in, she spoke in a whisper that the microphone amplified to the entire room. She told them everything. She told them about the pregnancy lie, how Brandon had instructed her to use it as leverage. "He told me it was the one thing you could not say no to," she said, looking at me. And then, he did not just forge the bond. He forged the guarantee. He signed Margaret Calloway's name, making her personally liable for the entire contract without her knowledge. He told me if the project failed, the town could take her house. The room exploded. The chairman banged his gavel. Brandon leaped to his feet, screaming that she was a liar. "Mr. Calloway." Dora's voice cut through the chaos. She pointed to the clean white envelope I had placed on his table. "That is a civil settlement agreement. It is your only option tonight." Ellis Crow ripped it open. His eyes scanned the page and went wide. Dora addressed the stunned council. "That document is simple. Mr. Calloway will sign it. Here. Tonight. He will admit the lien on his mother's home is fraudulent. He will admit to the signature forgery. He will agree to remove the lien immediately. In exchange, the district attorney's office will not oppose conditional bail while he awaits his certain criminal trial. If he refuses to sign..." She paused. "The DA will file supplemental charges for aggravated fraud and extortion right now, and we will move for an immediate emergency seizure of all his assets to cover the damages." It was a perfect trap. Brandon looked from the police officer by the door to his investors, who were staring at him with pure contempt. He shoved his lawyer aside and lunged for the microphone. "You cannot do this to me," he roared. "I did nothing wrong. I only used her name, my mother's name, because this stupid town believes—" The room went dead silent. He had confessed. He had insulted the council. He had implicated himself completely. The district attorney gave a single, sharp nod to the police officer. The officer began to move forward. Ellis Crow, his face purple, grabbed Brandon's arm. "Sign the paper, you fool," he hissed, shoving a pen into his hand. "Sign it now." With his hand shaking in pure, unrestrained rage, Brandon scribbled his name. He signed the admission. He signed away the lien. He agreed to turn over every device, every password, every file related to his fraudulent businesses. I did not watch him. I did not watch the officer escort him from the room, his face a mask of disbelief, to be processed for his conditional bail. My son was gone. I turned to the town council. "He is my problem," I said. "But this is your system. Please. I am asking you to fix these loopholes. Do it so that no other mother in this town, no other senior, is forced to become the unwilling bank for a system that is too careless to check its own paperwork." The chairman, speechless, banged the gavel. The hearing was over. The lien was gone. The fake bond was nullified. The criminal case was open. Brandon's finances were frozen. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I did not wait for Dora. I did not look at anyone. I walked straight down the center aisle, past the reporters, past Owen, past the whispering crowd. There were no hugs. There were no tears. I was just a 62-year-old woman, walking alone out of the town hall and into the cool night air. I had closed the loop on a story that had tried to strangle me for decades, and for the first time, I had written the ending myself. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from so we can connect. Share your thoughts, and please, subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and hit that hype button to help this story be heard.